It's my pleasure to be with you today to briefly talk with you about two things: our capacity to pay attention and why window views are so important in helping us pay attention in school settings. We've all experienced times when we felt too mentally exhausted to tackle what must be done. But despite such mental fatigue, we can be eager to go for a run or settle down with a good book or work in the garden, which kind of begs the question, what is it that fatigues with mental fatigue? The answer is our capacity to pay attention fatigues. Psychologists would say that our top-down attention fatigues. In my short comments with you this morning, I'm going to describe three things: the fact that we have two kinds of ways of attending to the world, the impact of our capacity to pay attention on a variety of, on our effectiveness, and I'm going to provide evidence from one empirical study. Okay, so these are the 3 points I'm going to make in my talk. When we begin to talk about attention, we have to start with Stephen and Rachel Kaplan from the University of Michigan, who are the authors and people that conceived of attention restoration theory. Attention restoration theory recognizes that we have two modes of attending to the world. I bet you can imagine what it's like for this woman to be testifying before this council. Her focus and attention is directed at the questions that she might be asked and the arguments she's making. And her attention will certainly be very different than when she's in a setting like this, in a natural space. Can you get a sense of that, how that might differ? Let's break this down a little bit. Attention restoration theory recognizes we have two modes of attending. The first mode is called top-down attention or paying attention. Top-down attention is perhaps the most important and useful resource humans possess. It's what many people refer to when they speak about concentrating or paying attention or focusing their attention. The second type of attention is called bottom-up attention. Bottom-up attention is triggered by stimuli in the world. Think of a sunset that's hard not to look at, or a compelling story, or hearing your name mentioned in a nearby conversation when, despite your best intentions, your attention is drawn away from your work to the nearby discussion. We can also look at these two kinds of attention in terms of the amount of effort they take. Top-down attention or paying attention takes considerable effort, as many of you know. Here's a dissertation I was editing some bit ago, and this takes me a lot of effort. It's not trivial. I focus my attention, and it's hard work to edit like this. Bottom-up attention, on the other hand, doesn't take any effort at all. It doesn't take any attentional effort to look at a campfire or a waterfall or these babies. And one of the great insights of attention restoration theory is that it argues that everyday forms of attention, everyday forms of nature in the environment support the bottom-up attention and therefore give top-down attention an opportunity to rest. We can also look at these two kinds of attention with respect to fatigue. Top-down attention or paying attention fatigues. Top-down attention fatigues, and you might be experiencing that right now. You know, in the course of our everyday lives, of a typical day in the modern world, our ability to focus our attention gets sluggish and becomes harder and harder to stay focused as the day goes on. In contrast, bottom-up attention does not fatigue. Now, you might get physically tired from walking in the woods or paying attention with puppies, but you don't get mentally fatigued from doing these things. Now, you may be wondering, Sullivan, well, why does all this matter? Why are you focusing on attention? Why am I making a big deal about the distinction between top-down attention and bottom-up attention? Well, there's two reasons. First, when you use bottom-up attention, you give top-down attention an opportunity to rest. And secondly, Top-down attention matters for every single thing we want to accomplish in the world. It's central to learning and problem solving, planning and carrying out tasks, self-monitoring and self-regulation, and effective social functioning. So let me give you a short summary of where you're at this point. We have two modes of attending to the world: top-down or paying attention, and bottom-up attention. Top-down attention is associated with everything we care about accomplishing in the world. Top-down attention fatigues with use. Using bottom-up attention restores our capacity to engage in top-down attention or to focus our attention. Now let me ask this next question. What are the costs of top-down attention fatigue? And this is important to consider as we consider window views. The first cost is that you become inattentive, and you may have experienced this. Have you ever been in a lecture and all of a sudden you realize you haven't listened, you haven't really, you feel a little lost, you haven't taken in the last minute or two or three because you were deep in your own thoughts? When you're inattentive like this, you're likely to miss details, and thus you're more likely to make errors. Another cost of mental fatigue is that you're much more likely to be irritable. And when you're more irritable, you're not in a good state to learn or solve problems or engage in effective social communications. And the third cost that I'll mention today of mental fatigue is that you're much more likely, when you're mentally fatigued, to be impulsive. That is, when you're mentally fatigued, you're more likely to do something that seems attractive in the moment but works against your long-term goals. So here's the key idea. Kaplan and Kepler proposed that because urban nature calls on bottom-up attention, it provides people a chance to restore and arrest their capacity to pay attention or use their top-down attention. That is, compared to more barren landscapes, urban landscapes that are green or that give you a view to a green urban landscapes support recovery from mental fatigue. Now, there's an enormous body of research that supports what I've just told you about attention restoration theory. This research comes from cancer patients and college students, from medical personnel and school children, public housing residents, and older people. Let me give you a quick overview of one empirical study that we conducted here at Illinois. This study was led by Dongying Li, who's at Texas A&M University. This research, it was an experimental design in which high school students were randomly assigned to classrooms that varied in their level of exposure to daylight and green landscapes. We asked, for high school students experiencing academic demands, will window views that contain daylight or green landscapes actually make a difference in how fast they recover from mental fatigue? Now, here are some of the classrooms. We did this study in 5 different high schools in the surrounding area around the University of Illinois. And in each of the high schools, they had 3 window conditions: no window condition, a daylight condition that that had a window that looked out into a built space that provided daylight to come in, and a similar kind of window, except this time it looked out onto a green space. And here's an example from another high school, those same 3 conditions. Here's a simplified description of the procedure we used. We brought students into their own high school in the summer, and they were randomly assigned to one of these 3 conditions. We got some baseline measurements from them. We gave them a series of challenging academic activities designed to make them mentally fatigued. We measured their capacity to pay attention using multiple measures. We gave them a break of 10 minutes in the classroom that they were assigned to, and then we measured their attention again. So what I'm going to do is show you a comparison in a few minutes of the attention measures before the break and attention measures after the break. 94 students participated in this study. So what were the academic activities? We asked them to give a 5-minute impromptu speech about their dream job. We asked them to do a ridiculously demanding proofreading task. I don't have the time to go through it right now. Participants, I won't go through it in detail, but we gave them 15 pages stapled together that look like this, and they had to engage in a difficult task of remembering and writing down some sequences of numbers. Then we had them do a subtraction test Each participant subtracted 13 from 4,029 and kept subtracting 13 from the answer without the use of any paper or pencil or calculator. And they did this for 5 full minutes. We used multiple measures of attention to measure their attention, digits forward, digits bent backwards, and the Stroop color word. Digits forwards, the researcher would say a sequence of numbers starting with 3, 3, 4, 5, and you'd say those numbers back, 3, 4, 5. You do 3 digits twice, and then you move to 4 digits, and you do that twice, and 5 digits twice, and 6 digits twice, and so on. And you would do this until you made 2 consecutive errors. Digits backwards is the same thing, except you flip the numbers back. If I say 3, 4, 5, you'd say 5, 4, 3, and so forth. The Stroop color word. The Stroop is a really interesting test. Participants first read the actual meaning of the written text, and then they were asked to say the color of the text on a different sheet. And we recorded the number of errors, the number of times they actually said green in this first instance here instead of blue. Okay, so what do we find? Do views to daylight or green landscapes improve the speed recovery from mental fatigue? Right now I'm going to show you the 3 classroom conditions: no window, the daylight, and the green condition, and the scores after the classroom tests, and then immediately after the break in the classroom that they were in, the 10-minute break. So let's make a prediction. Make a prediction in your own mind. How are people going to perform after a 10-minute break, after these intense academic activities in a no window condition? Have you got a slope in mind? You were right. There's no impact. The no window condition had no impact on the digit score forward scores. And the same was true for daylighting, but for the students that were randomly assigned to the green view, they had a 12% increase in their capacity to score on the digits forward. And we saw a very similar pattern for digits backwards, essentially no statistically different relationship for the no window or the daylight conditions, but a significant increase, 17% increase for the green view. And finally, for the Stroop, we did the Stroop only once because the Stroop suffers from learning. You get better at it if you do it a second time. So we looked at the fail count. The students in the no window condition made about 2.5 errors. The students in the daylight condition made about 1.8 errors. And the students in the green condition made 0.27 errors, almost 10 times fewer errors in the green condition than in the no window condition. So let me wrap up my talk right now with these points. First is that classroom views to nature help speed recovery from mental fatigue, and exposure to daylight did not impact the recovery from mental fatigue. And the final summary point that I want to drive home is that we should work together through symposiums like this, through sharing our research and trying to impact the development of the built environment to create more green views from windows. That ends my presentation.